Welcome back to another edition of the podcast. And today is our Gameweek 34 National League predictions that are proudly sponsored by Cards Accepted. And of course, tonight, I'm absolutely buzzing because I'm joined by my partner in crime once again. It's took about 2 weeks. He's Skyped half the season. He's got his mates to help him out in the predictions league. But of course, it is Paul Franklin. Paul, firstly, how are you doing? And have you had a good holiday?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, mate. Very, very good. Got back this afternoon, actually. I spent 2 weeks over in the Balkans, actually. I was a week 5 days in Bulgaria, skiing with some mates, and I came back for 2 days, and then I went out with the family to Bosnia. So we went to Jaharina, which is the Olympic site of the 1984 Winter Olympics, just up the road from Sarajevo. So got back this morning and straight back on the horse and back into the swing of talking about National League. I have kept abreast of it as much as I can whilst I've been away. Have seen some bits and pieces on obviously on social media, and I tuned into the Wheelstone game whilst I was away in the week last night. So positive wins. That was quite nice to go to bed seeing them win. But back to it. Back to seeing what's going to happen now going forward in the next few weeks. It's getting interesting at every end of both ends of the table, really, isn't it, Luke?
Yeah, so you've basically skived off for a number of weeks, and your mates have helped you get back up to scratch in the predictions league, because you're right back in it now. I think at one point, it might have been just before you left, I think you beat me by a point, and then you went on your holiday, living it up abroad, and then now it's down to like 4 points, and I've actually done half decent overall. But the people I've been up against have done slightly better than me. Rob is never, ever coming on this podcast again to do predictions until the end of the season, because he got 12 points. I think the record is actually 15. Sam did half decent. He's been on twice as well, and he's done well in the predictions league. So, yeah, you'll have to thank them at the end of the season if you don't end up having to wear that Barnet costume once again and getting it out of the cupboard. If you've still got it in your house, I'm sure you've returned it now.
No, I find out. Apologies to Trevor. I still have it in my wardrobe in the bag upstairs to send. Might be worth keeping till the end of the season, because I might have to be wearing it again. But yeah, thanks to Sam and Rob for filling in whilst I've been away. Much appreciated, and thanks for getting me up in that predictions league. And on your tail now, Luke. We're on your tail, so watch this space.
Yeah, I certainly will have to. I think, honestly, if you lose this season, it has to be worse than last year. You have to have the face paint and everything, Barnet, and acts like you're Barnet's biggest fan. Of course, the change of plan for me, I think it's a better one, to be honest. I know Rochdale are our main rivals, but for me personally, I don't know. I just don't think it'd be as funny, to be honest, if I ended up having to wear a York City shirt, which is what's probably going to happen if I end up losing now. Hopefully now Paul's back, that doesn't end up happening. But we're wearing a York shirt, and if Matt Uglow will come and pay for the shirt, then I'll get stones on the back once again. If he comes out and pays for it, but I think that's unlikely. But please remember, everyone, to like and subscribe. Also, check out our sponsors. There's a link in the description to do that. You get 50% off your card machine. Anyway, a lot has certainly happened in the last week. One side has dropped into the bottom four for the first time this season. There's a couple of sides that are really off form, and it does feel like they could potentially be sneaking into relegation, sleepwalking, I should say, into relegation this season. And I'm sure we will come on to that. Also, there's been a managerial change, and that brings us on to, I think, the first comment of tonight, which is, of course, by Stephen Jones, who's a Fylde fan. As a Fylde fan, what do you think about Kevin Phillips being sacked? I think he should have never have been appointed, in my opinion. I want Mike Williamson in now, or Luke Williams. I think they're both, for me personally, slightly unrealistic for Mike Williamson and Luke Williams. Yeah, I think we can all agree that's off the table. He's then gone on to ask us who do we think is the best suited for the next Fylde manager. Well, it's only recently happened. Paul's come off his holiday. I've got a few names, but they all feel slightly unrealistic. For me personally, I think the type of coach that they're going to go for, being an academic and someone who's working within the academy at higher level, or an assistant manager from a club in the higher level, for me personally. But I have got a few names that might intrigue Fylde fans. Is there anyone for you, Paul, or it's a hard one, I suppose?
Yeah, it's a really, really hard one, because clearly it hasn't worked this season with the two they've had. Yeah, it was a difficult one for Kevin Phillips. He's gone in. Yes, he's had this for window. He signed a couple of players. He only signed Kane Odom, didn't he, from Gateshead this week as well. So a really difficult one because he was a little bit unproven. I guess really in terms of the level. Clearly proven at the levels he played and the goals he scored, but unproven management level. And South Shields, it was all set up for him, I think, really. Hartlepool didn't have an awful lot of exposure there, probably not given the opportunity. Certainly got given the opportunity here at Fylde, and he didn't put up any trees. And I think we've talked regularly, haven't we, around the fact that they just haven't done what we'd expected them to have done with some of the squad they've got. I mean, I've seen them this season. I thought they were pretty poor, but they looking at what people have said, and Joe from Off the Line blog, I think he's hit the nail on the head now, is they need a bit of experience. You look at Hartlepool, they went back to Lenny Lawrence, and I know, their management setup is slightly different at Hartlepool, but they can't afford now to go and have another experimental type appointment. You might have some names there that would jump out. I think actually that'd be quite good, but they could be unproven. I think Mike Williamson is a great shout. Would it be unrealistic? Slightly more realistic than maybe Luke Williams, I would suggest. But I don't think it's unrealistic to get someone like that in there. I mean, it depends what these managers want in their CVs, and that's a really difficult one as well because Fylde are likely to go down. I think they're probably going to go down. I'm not saying they will, but they're probably going to go down. Is a manager going to be brought in knowing they might go down and rebuild in National League North? Or are they going to bring in a manager that wants to try and get them to survive? A bit like what Wealdstone have done with their new management team, bringing someone in who actually we can try and help make them survive in the National League rather than actually we're doomed to National League, regional leagues. Let's rebuild. So no names really sort of come off the top of my head, if I'm honest, Luke, apart from maybe Mike Williamson. Who's out there? Who's available? There's not many, is there?
No, there isn't. Thing is with Fylde, I genuinely feel that if they can get the right coaching, this side could survive. Because whenever I watch them, I know you've mentioned there that you think they're pretty poor, and a lot of people do, and maybe it's just because when they come up against Halifax, they're suited to playing against us. But even when I've watched them, in highlights before, and some of the goals they've scored, I genuinely feel this Fylde squad should be doing a lot better. You've got Nick Horton in the team. I genuinely don't think it's just him who's a standout for me. I don't think the rest of the sides, like a National League North side, I think there's other players that are capable of playing in this division. They've got Tyler Roberts as well. He's a good player, young player coming through, only 19 years of age. They've got, I think, Javin Massey. He was actually playing in League One not too long ago for Wigan. Eusta Bassi, another player on the wing as well. And I think the main issue for Fylde is defensively. And perhaps they do rely on Nick Horton too much. I think these other players probably need to contribute a bit more going forward. But they're certainly good individuals on their day, all of them. And it's quite, I think, a hard one to call with Fylde for me when I actually watch them play, because I look at them and I think, I look at this side and I'm like, these should be staying up this season. And they just every season underperform. Last season, they survived by the skin of their teeth. This season, you've mentioned that it's looking like they are going to go down. If you're losing to Boston at home, I know Boston have improved, but for me, that gives me the impression that, they could potentially go down, because a huge issue for them is they'll win a game, but they can't get any more. They can't back that up with another win. Whereas Wealdstone, I thought they were doomed a couple of weeks ago, yet they've just pulled it out of the bag. They've got back-to-back wins, both away from home. Maidenhead themselves, beating in 4 now for them. 3 clean sheets in that time as well. All the sides around them are capable of going on mini runs. What seems to happen with Fylde is they'll get a win, then they'll lose a couple of games, then they'll get another win. And there's just no momentum there for them to build on anything. Whereas you'll see Wealdstone and Maidenhead going actually worse runs than where they may not even win in 10. Whereas Fylde, they probably get on average probably 1 win in 6 or 7. So they're a little bit more consistent. Well, not consistent. They're very inconsistent, I should say, for me, Fylde. Matt Saunders is at one another name I'd throw out there. Of course, he was at Notts County's assistant. He left the club to pursue another career, I should say. I think that means he's going to become a manager. Would Fylde be below him, perhaps? And he was rumoured to actually go back to Wealdstone. Mike Williamson, I think, a good shout. They just feel like quite ambitious appointments, but that is something perhaps that Fylde actually need. They need to bring in someone that's quite an ambitious appointment to get the best out of this squad, because I do think long term, if Fylde stay in this division, and I did say this last year, I think that they'll be onto something long term and be able to push at the right end of the division. The question is surviving this season for me, and I do think that's going to be an uphill battle for them now, particularly when you see Wealdstone, Maidenhead, all improving recently, even the likes of Braintree as well. Which do you think's more realistic, Matt Saunders or Mike Williamson?
I don't think Matt Saunders is a bad shout. Geographically, it might not work. Obviously, I know Matt from when he was at Wealdstone, and he's. I think part of the challenge was moving away to Nottingham, and he'd have to move again up to the northwest. But he's very, very keen to become a manager in his own right, which is excellent for him. It's great news, because he clearly, as a coach, he was very, very successful with Stuart Maynard, and now wants to sort of branch out and do his own thing. So I can't see that being an unrealistic prospect for him. I think if anyone saw his interview, I think he would back himself to do the best he can to keep AFC Fylde up. I think that's a given, and it's a great platform to sort of to go on, isn't it? A full-time side. They've got an excellent setup. The stadium up there, they've got everything in place to be a National League team, rather than being yo-yo in between National League and National League North. I think you're right, Luke. It's getting that right person in now to get the best out of a squad that has probably got a little bit of untapped potential. And I certainly think someone like Matt Saunders could tap into what they have. The problem you've got is you haven't got many games to play with. What is it? I don't know how many games left. They played 30 odd games, haven't they? So they played 31 games. So they haven't got a huge amount of games left. They've only got 15 games. That's not a lot of games now to start implementing something new if you're going to be a coach. So I think that's why they probably talk about the experience, is someone who can get the best out of what they've already got there. Now, can Mike Williamson do that? Can an academy coach, an assistant coach that's worked within the EFL, the EPL, or the National League? It's a really, really tough one for them, because they're going to want to keep that National League status, but it's holding on by a thread. I'm not saying they will go down, because they're not that far off Wealdstone, Maidenhead, Aldershot. Yeah. Like you said, I don't think consistently they're good enough at this moment in time to pull a few results together to get themselves out of it.
Yeah, we were saying that about Wealdstone a couple of weeks ago, saying that I think they're doomed. Most of us have, I think, actually backed them to go down. Obviously, still, you're right in the thick of it. Those 2 wins have managed to get you out of the drop zone. Of course, Aldershot below you. It's quite interesting to see that Aldershot have actually dropped into the drop zone now. But of course, they have still got a game in hand on Wealdstone, and if they do win that game in hand, they would go above Wealdstone at the moment. As for Fylde, I think in terms of them appointing a new manager, what I think makes it a little unrealistic for those two managers to want to go there is the fact that it's very likely, like you've mentioned, that Fylde do drop down into the National League North. The hardest task, I think, for Fylde, for me personally, for those type of managers, is actually keeping them up this season, because they have to work with the current squad that they've got. If they can keep Fylde up financially, I think you'd be backed at Fylde in the summer to bring in your own players. And really establish your own identity. And that's something that I think Matt Saunders and Mike Williamson would love to do at Fylde. And I think that would be a really intriguing kind of task there for them. I think if you actually watch them long term, I think that would be an interesting appointment for those two managers if one of them did go there. But would you really want to go to a relegation side at the moment where you can't bring in your own players? They're right in the thick of the drop zone. 2 managers have already failed this season. For me personally, I think no for those two. As well, you look at Mike Williamson, he's moved out of this division to go to Carlisle, back into the Football League. It's clearly not worked out there. it's kind of a backward step if you think of it. If he ended up going to Fylde, and I think for his pride, would he like that? Would he like the fact that he's done well at Gateshead, then got to move to a bigger club in the Football League, to then go back to the National League, but to a side that's doing a lot worse than Gateshead themselves? For me personally, I don't think Mike Williamson would be prepared to do that. But if he did, I think he'd have a bit of egg on his face just going there in the first place, considering that he left Gateshead like he did mid-season too. Anything else to add on that? Or
no, I mean, the only other thing I can see him doing is appointing someone till the end of the season and evaluating again. Evaluating again in the summer. Do they go and get someone like Graham Alexander, who's got some really good credentials within the Football League, give them a short-term contract to try and get them out of it? It's a really there is managers out there, but like you said, Luke, will they want to come to Fylde? Can Fylde afford them? There's a whole number of factors that relate to trying to get a manager in at this stage of the season, because short of a few loan deals or free agency deals, they can't go and get new players, so they're stuck with what they've got. And if they've struggled, consistently throughout the season defensively, are they going to improve in the next 15 games? Do they have to get a Sam Allardyce type manager in just to say, right, we just got to stop losing games, don't worry about how we win them, etc. It's more just being able to get results rather than performances. So tough one for the board. I think they probably caused themselves their own problems. Should they have kept Kevin Phillips as long as they did? They've given him a go. He hasn't worked. It's a difficult one. I don't know too much about AFC Fylde. Being out in the Northwest is a real tough one. So, for me, geographically, because I don't know too much about them, but they're a club that's got everything in place. They just need that final piece of that manager to push them on.
A few of the names that people have mentioned, we've had Ben Strevens. I think we're meant to say. I was actually looking at that one, but I just think geographically it wouldn't work. I know I've mentioned Matty Saunders, but he did move up from the south to Nottingham. I don't know if he'd want to go all the way to Fylde. I think geographically the one that makes the most sense, and it still would be a bit of a trek, would actually be Mike Williamson relocating to the northwest. There, Mickey Barnes has actually come in and said, "Luke, I don't think Mike Williamson is unrealistic at all. They signed Kane Adam the day before he got the bullet. Mike was awful at Carlisle and the season with Milton Keynes. Jay was at Milton Keynes as well. I forgot about that, I should say. I think that's it for people who've suggested. A few people have actually suggested Mike Williamson. We've had Christopher, who's obviously coming as well tonight. And he said, "Evening, gents. Hope you're both well. Gateshead International Stadium was certainly the place to be. 4-3 victory for Gateshead. They were 3-2 down against Sutton as well in that game. And that kind of proves as well that when everyone's starting to write Gateshead off, including myself, I'll be honest, about them slipping up and not being as strong as what they were before Christmas with the players that they've lost. Some of the wins that they have got recently have been very impressive. I know they've had a few slip-ups, but beating Sutton the way they did shows a lot of character. And then also going to your boys, Wealdstone, and putting 4 past you as well is very impressive. And then we've also had AJ who said, "Hello, Luke. I'm get this far, but I think Barnet are going to win the league now after that performance on Tuesday." Yeah, the thing is, what I will say about that, I won't get too ahead of myself if I was a Barnet fan. In the reverse fixture, of course, York beat Barnet at their place. Barnet did have home advantage. I think it's a huge win for Barnet. The 7 points clear now. Of course, York do have 2 games in hand, but that's going to be difficult to win both of those. Halifax on Saturday, my own team. I think on paper you'd look at that and you'd think that's going to be quite a tough game, particularly when you look at Halifax's away form. So that's a tough game for York. But for me overall, we know the National League. I've been watching it too long now, and Paul certainly will have been, to realise that it's not over yet. I think York will come back stronger after that defeat midweek, and I still think it's going to go down to the final day. One thing I will say, and we'll speak a bit more in detail with this, I've said it for the past couple of weeks, maybe even months now. I think Forest Green Rovers are going to fall away from that title race. And I think my point's slightly been proven at the moment. You look at their form recently, a fair amount of draws in there. there are 3 wins in 10 games overall, which isn't good enough for me to go on to win the title. A lot of draws in there, few defeats as well. Lost to Braintree, and then they dropped points to Ebbsfleet as well midweek. For me, Forest Green Rovers, I think they will be eliminated from that title race very, very soon. And maybe I'm a bit quick in saying that, but I've said all along, I think they've got quite a small squad compared to Barnet and York. They haven't got the same strength in depth. And if you actually watch York and Barnet compared to Forest Green Rovers, I just feel they're a lot more superior compared to themselves. What's your thoughts on that, Paul? Do you think it's still a 3-horse race or 2-horse race, or even one perhaps?
No, I mean, I think York having the 2 games in hand it's very difficult because you rather have points on the board. But 2 games in hand is a useful thing to have at this stage of the season. I think the problem York have got is that since January really, and spending a bit of money on Stones and having a really good purple patch, they've slipped away, and it's got to be Barnet's to lose now, Luke. It's got to be Barnet's to lose. They made a real statement the other night. I didn't watch the game, but in reading across social media, especially Barnet fans, sort of suggesting that's probably one of the best they've ever played for a number of years. They did a job on York, who are a very good football side, as we know. And fair play to Barnet, because they've taken a grip of this. York haven't seemed to wanted to take a grip of it. Forest Green Rovers haven't wanted to take a grip of it. Oldham, we won't even talk about them, and because we talk about them all the time. None of them have gone, right, we're going to take a grip here and we're going to try and win this league. Barnet are the ones that have done it. And to be 7 points clear, although the teams have got games in hand, that's a massive advantage to have. We're looking at the Premier League level with Liverpool and Arsenal. It will fluctuate, but to have those points on the board is a huge thing. And to go and beat the team second, as convincing as they did the other night, I think it's got to be Barnet to lose. And listen, I've been critical of Barnet. I've been critical of Dean Brennan, openly critical, and I got a lot of stick about it. But I've got to say that, fair play to him. At this moment in time, he's using his budget well. He's using his loan players well. He's mixed his players up. He's sold Kabamba. He's brought in Unlove. He kept Hartigan. He changed the goalkeeper a couple of times, and there was mixed reviews around that, but it seems to have worked. There's still time for them to possibly implode. I can't see it this time, but York will be on their tails. But fair play to Barnet, because Dean Brennan, and I have said this, when it comes to the sharp end of the season, he seems to either outcoach himself, not quite do it. At the moment in time, Tuesday was a statement of, we are doing it this time. So I think it's theirs to lose. There will be twists and turns. I think you're right. Forest Green Rovers have dropped out of it. Oldham have dropped out. I think we're going to have to look at Barnet and York. It's going to two-horse race to get that promotion place. The playoffs are then sort of up for grabs, aren't they? And we've seen teams in the playoff position slip. Solihull has slipped. Halifax are there or thereabouts. Gateshead have managed to stay in there. So
I think Paul's internet might have gone, but no, we're mentioning there, of course, about the title race. Just something to mention as well. I know I've mentioned it recently quite a lot here. I'll just remove Paul, and hopefully he can join me shortly. But something I will mention here about Barnet as well, they haven't actually lost at home since the 27th of February last year, which means they will actually, by the time they next play at home in the league, they don't have a home game till the 4th of March. They will be unbeaten for over a year in the National League, I should say. Of course, they did lose at home to Solihull Moors in the playoff fixture, but it is ridiculous, that home form overall. And, I think the York game was a big test for them. It was a test in a way to see whether they've actually come on as a side from being a side that seemed to bottle it in the big occasions, because that was a stigma that was kind of been attached to them. If, we've mentioned before the Solihull game in the playoffs, York away early on in the season, a number of times this season. We've mentioned it. I think Paul is back with us now. But a number of times this season, we've mentioned about Barnet, not being able to get over the line because they seem to always bottle it when it really does matter. I think Tuesday night, to me, shows how far Barnet have come on this season. Sorry, Paul. I think you cut off them, but I don't know if
sorry, I don't know what happened. It all just went. It all started whirring, and I wasn't there, so apologies.
I don't know if you remember what you're saying, but if you did, if you want to pick up on it, you can do.
Where did it? I mean, it was just a case of it's Barnet's to lose, Luke. I think I don't know how much you caught of what I said, but like you said, we have been critical of Dean Brennan and Barnet are not finishing the job. I think they're gonna do it this time. The 2 games in hand for York definitely is the big thing. If they pick up 6 points and it trims down to 1, then it's game on. I think Barnet having 7 points clear and having the points on the board is a massive thing for them. And again, beating them so convincingly in the week in a really good performance, apparently, then fair play to Barnet. And it's going to be there'll be twists and turns, but I think it's going to be theirs to lose now.
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of twists and turns. Yeah, I think a few weeks ago we were saying York. I think it's theirs to lose. Of course, there's that bit of a gap now, a bit of a cushion in for Barnet, 7 points. If York do win those games in hand, they will be 1 point behind York, but Barnet, I should say, actually. But that is a big ask to win both of those games. And as well, Barnet, they're just on such good form at the moment. Something I have noticed as well, have tightened up defensively significantly compared to that first half of the season, whilst also scoring a good number of goals as well themselves. So for me, yeah, it does feel like it's Barnet's to lose, but not long ago we were saying it is York's to lose. Just do feel like, do you think there's more pressure on Barnet to win this league, or do you think there's more pressure on York? I don't mean in terms of Barnet now being top, but with the money that York have spent. But then you could say from Barnet's perspective, well, we've been towards the top for the last couple of seasons. We were the favourites before a ball was kicked. Who do you reckon's got the most pressure on them to win the league this season?
I think probably from an outsider's perspective, York have probably got more pressure on them. The amount of money spent, Matt Ugler being Matt Ugler and saying things and doing things that not every week like it was, but making statements of intent by buying players for amounts of money allegedly that they're buying them for, because obviously we'll never really know what they cost. But I think there's probably pressure on Dean Brennan and his management team to get promoted, because that's what they've been wanting for the last few years, especially since he's been in charge. But there was a bit of a change around and a real flux of managers that Barnet tried and didn't work. But they've seemed to have hit on Dean and Dean Brennan and his team. So I think there's probably pressure from the Barnet fans, within Barnet to get promoted. But I think from a National League perspective, I think the pressure's on York.
Yeah, I do. I think, like you've mentioned there, I think you've summed it up perfectly as well. And I think as well, with Barnet as well, it would just feel like for Dean Brennan, his main objective is to get Barnet, I should say, out of the National League. And I think he will have achieved that and done everything he can for that club if he got them into the Football League. And this season, it does feel like it is their best opportunity to do that, with them being in the driving seat at the moment. We've had Caroline, who's a channel member, come in tonight and said, Aldershot, with the Aldershot badge, I should say. Good evening, Paul. Did you did us no favour last night? Yeah, of course. Defeating Braintree as well. It's weird to think that Aldershot are now involved in this relegation battle. I am very concerned for them slightly. I do think they're going to have enough to be able to get out of it. But it just does feel like the way they play, it's so stubborn, and they need to change this style, because they play such an attacking way where they're actually probably better. They've probably got better defenders compared to attackers. And for me, overall this season, they really should be changing that style if they want to stay up. I still think they will. I don't know about you. I think you kind of hope they won't in a way, so you can survive. But
yeah, it's a really difficult one because we have spoken about Aldershot and Maidenhead and Woking and Wealdstone, all being in that 4th, 5th from bottom positions, but Dagenham as well, but Aldershot have just slowly sort of dropped into their Luke, haven't they? They've not, they're not getting hammered every week, but they're just obviously not performing. And I don't know for definite, but it hasn't helped that their manager was away on leave due to his illness, and how much did that affect the club and the team? We've spoken on a number of occasions around not replacing the quality that they had last year. Those lads they had last year playing in the Football League. Now they've never really replaced them. and they've just sort of slowly just dropped into there. And that's the worrying aspect, though, isn't it? Because when you look at playoff teams, there's always one team that charges up the table or has a really good finish. And then you look at this, are Aldershot the team that are going to drop like a stone? Will Dagenham survive, or could they go the same way? Woking have stabilised. Wealdstone and Maidenhead have picked up in the last week or two. How long will that sort of upturn in fortunes sort of continue for them to get further out of the table? But yeah, I mean, I do worry for Aldershot, because they're hitting a bad run of form at a time when you want to actually hit a good run of form and try and push yourself out of it, and they're going the other way. So yeah, difficult. I mean, they've got Hartlepool on Saturday, and Hartlepool are no mugs now. They pulled themselves round and sorted themselves out. So they've got to try and start getting some points on the board as soon as possible, especially when you look at who Wealdstone have got over the next few weeks. Maidenhead have got a winnable game potentially against Yeovil on Saturday. All of a sudden, they could be not cut adrift, but they could start be looking at shit. Where are we going to get our next points from? Whereas other teams can see where their next points might come from.
I think the recruitment in the summer for Aldershot was very disappointed on the forward front. Widrington that last season, I should say, did very well with the side, found some great individuals, particularly in Stokes and Tollard. Of course, they've inevitably, I think, for Aldershot, have obviously moved on back into the Football League. We don't feel like they've reinvested that money, because they got a fee for both players, and I don't think they've reinvested that money in the right way. I don't think the owner's done them Widrington any favours. I don't think he's really backed him in the summer. If you look at the replacements that they've made to those players, they got quite healthy fees for both Tollage and Stokes. Yet that money doesn't feel like it's being put to good use, particularly on the forward front. I think defensively they're better than what they are last season. But last season they had that ability to be able to outscore teams. This season they're trying to replicate that same style of play as what they did last season. Yeah, I don't think they've got the forward players to be able to outscore these teams. And it doesn't matter what defenders you have at the back. The way Aldershot play, they're going to concede goals. They go to try and entertain fans. But the thing is, I think at some point you've got to be stubborn, and you've got to think, right, I've got a strong defence here. Perhaps going forward, we don't have the same players as what we had last season. We need to change this style of play. And that's what I think Aldershot need to do. And I think the fans now, until the end of the season, I don't think they really care. They just want to get this season over and done with for Aldershot and rebuild next year, because at the moment they're out of form at probably the worst possible time. And we say out of form, there's been a lot of draws in there. They've not been able to play a number of games. They've then come back and they had Eastleigh away and then Southend away. Eastleigh, of course, improved. Southend themselves hunting down a playoff spot. So they're not the kindest of games for them, but Saturday's going to be huge for Aldershot now. Of course, they've got Hartlepool at home. As well, coming in tonight, we've got David. David is back with us. It's a decent week for my Magpies. Solid Magpies. Solid point at Hartlepool and bonus win at Oldham. Not pretty, but vital. It certainly is. And this is what I mean in contrast to Aldershot. Maidenhead probably don't play the most attractive football, but they're effective. You look at some of the wins they've got recently. They've been able to grind out the results. We've spoke all season about Maidenhead conceding too many goals. That's one of the main reasons I predicted them to go down. Yet in the previous, I think, 3 of the last 4, they've had 3 clean sheets on the bounce, I should say. And that other game, I think they only conceded 1 goal. So 1 goal conceded in 4 for me just shows the turnaround there at Maidenhead, whilst also being able to pick up some brilliant results and vital results, as David mentioned there. We've also had come in tonight. We've had Ease come in, who's a Barnet fan, Paul.
You don't know what Boston team will turn up. They played well against us. No, I mean, it's when you look at Boston, what they got, they've got 7 points out of their last 5 games, which, if you look at the bottom 4, is the best out of the bottom 4. So I mean, they're certainly trying their best to claw their way out of that relegation zone. I mean, they've still got 2 games in hand over Fylde, 2 over Wealdstone, 1 over Aldershot. So they've got some games to play, but a loss, win, draw, picking up 4 or 5 points every, out of 3 or 4 games at a time is not a bad effort. But they have left themselves a lot to do, because they are technically 8 points clear, 8 points away from being out of the bottom four. So I think you're right. We don't know what sort of Boston team are going to turn up. They've got Eastleigh on Saturday, which is going to be a tough one for them because Eastleigh, again, a team that we don't talk too much about, but are just lost 3 on the bounce and won two of the last won their last 2 games rather. So not an easy game for Boston to be going to have to play, but yeah, a really difficult one. But I think they probably left it a bit too late, Boston, in terms of getting out of it. But Wealdstone play them on Tuesday, which is a massive 6-pointer. If they can pick up points against Wealdstone and Eastleigh in the next 2 games, all of a sudden they haven't lost in 4 or 5. They're going to be on a run of form. And I'm thinking actually we can catch Aldershot, we can catch Wealdstone, Maidenhead, but yeah, I think the next 2 or 3 games is quite pivotal now. If you talk about 2 or 3 game periods, where do you end up after those games? And how you've done allows you to see how you might do the next few, and they're much more important at the sharp end of the season than maybe they would be at the beginning of the season. So yeah, it's a tough one for Boston to get out of, but they're giving it a good go.
A trend I've noticed with sides that come into this division as well, it often takes over half a season for them to actually adjust. Gateshead, when they initially got promoted, I know they were struggling. A lot of people looked like they were going to go down. And in the second half of the season, they would like a completely different team. They ended up finishing mid-table. Dorking, they looked like a side that could have gone down in that first season, yet they comfortably survived themselves. And it does feel like this season as well. We've seen Braintree. I know they lost in midweek, but they've improved in this second half of the season, and as well as Boston as well, become a lot more competitive in recent weeks. Drawing to Barnet, I should say, beating York, of course, as well, winning midweek as well. For me, overall, it's going to be tough, but it does feel like because of that first half of the season, I think we had Christian James on, who's a Boston fan. He said that if you look at the amount of points we probably need to be averaging 2 points per game until the end of the season. And for a side that picked up, I think, 5 wins in the first half of the season, for me personally, that's going to be a really big ask, isn't it, for Boston to survive this season. Also had Jordan, who's coming in, who's a channel member and the Barnet fan. He said, bees are going up, ole. And then we've also had coming tonight, we've had M. He's coming, I'll call you M. He said there's a lot of games to go. There certainly is. Someone's put, be prepared to be Devonshire. I think that's from another Maidenhead fan. And then Caroline's coming, Paul.
We are all fed up with the same way of play. It's not an exciting watch. It'd be interesting to hear from Caroline what the fans think around Tommy Widgington and his future with the club, because I think sometimes you're a victim of your own success when you're someone like Tommy Widgington at a club like Aldershot, where he did so well last year and probably did better than expected. So that you then get a fan base that want to do as well, if not better, than they did the previous season. And clearly they haven't done that. So it'd be interesting from Caroline and any other Aldershot fans in terms of how do they see the long-term future of Widgington? What's their feelings around how it is at the moment? Because he could be one that's in real danger of losing his job. Because if you think of all the other teams, they've sort of swapped their managers around fairly recently, haven't they? So it's only them that, as they're dropping down, you can't see the likes of Boston, Tamworth, Ebbsfleet change their manager. Maidenhead are unlikely to change their manager. Alan Devonshire will be there till the day he dies. I think that guy's he's part of the furniture. So I think Tommy Widgington's got to be looking over his shoulder, and what do they do with him? So I'm interested to see what the fans think about that.
Yeah, well, also I'm going to also ask the live chat their bottom 4 predictions as well. So let us know your bottom 4 predictions. I'll put a message in there as well for those who want to let us know your bottom 4 predictions at the moment. For me with Aldershot, you've mentioned there about him being a victim of his own success. I think Aldershot, they are quite. I think the fan base is quite demanding in a way because of the size of the club and the history behind it. I think Aldershot wants to be a side that's looking to get out of the Football League. And last season, they were a lot more competitive towards the top end of the table. Whereas this year, it felt like to me for the first half of the season, they're not really have much to play for. I thought they'll always be fine. But it does feel like at the moment they are sleepwalking towards relegation with the current form that they're on. And something certainly does need to change very, very quickly. Declan's coming and he said AFC Fylde, Aldershot, Boston and Ebbsfleet as well. So he thinks your side, Reelstone, will survive and Maidenhead as well at the moment. But if Aldershot went down, I don't think we'd see them back for a number of years, to be honest. And I do think there's ownership issues there with the current owner not spending money and things like that. Someone's put Ebbsfleet and Boston as well. He said so far. I don't think he wants to name the other two. But yeah, let us know your bottom four predictions, guys, as well. And we're going to come on to the predictions then now. No, he said Ebbsfleet, Boston, Fylde and Dagenham. Dagenham to go down. Yeah, they're a side as well. Another side, a bit like Aldershot, look like they're sleepwalking to relegation. Before we do get onto the predictions, Caroline's answered your question. He said he recruited players who were injured straight away, so we have never seen them play more than one game. He's frustrated and tells us fans that our job is to support by watching. There isn't really much he can say at the moment to the fans, I suppose, in his position. His side's clearly not underperforming. I don't know what your thoughts are to that.
Yeah, listen, managers are always, they're always going to say the things that it's going to help them with self-preservation. That they don't. I don't think managers make excuses, but there's reasons as to why they might be where they are. Ultimately, the buck falls with the manager. No matter how well they do or how well they don't do, it's always the manager. So I get it. I get all the Aldershot fans. We had it with Matt Taylor in the season at Wealdstone. Absolutely rubbish, useless. The guy was useless, right? And he said the right things. He's media trained. Tommy Williamson's been in the professional game. He's media trained. He'll say the things that they think the fans want to hear. There's a bit of self-preservation. They probably don't say the things that they probably want to say to protect their squad. Part of that is because they're the players they've recruited. They're the systems of play they adopt. But I get the frustration, around fans saying, yeah, it's all well and good managers turn around and say, well, your job is to support us, but you've got to give us something to support. And sometimes we don't have that, do we? As we've all our teams have been through periods where they're not particularly good in our opinions. They're not playing very well. They're not getting results. Individuals aren't doing what we expect them to do. Especially those that are signed on big deals or good big names. So yeah, it can be frustrating as a fan to hear your manager saying, "Oh, you've got to sit there and you've got to support us. Your job is support us." You'll put something on the pitch that allows us to support you. And we are very critical as football fans, and I understand that. But I think we can also be very reasonable, very sort of forgiving at times as well, especially if there's a bit of credit in the bank with the likes of Tommy Williamson. There's probably a bit of credit in the bank with him because of what he did last season, and maybe because he was away from the sidelines for a little bit. But ultimately, it boils down to results, Luke. And we, as fans, we all want results, right? If Aldershot were playing a boring style of football, but winning football games and weren't in the bottom four, the comment made wouldn't even be made, right? But because they're not winning games and not playing well, those fans can quite rightly say, well, you're not playing a good brand of football and we're not winning football matches. So when that happens, it's a really difficult thing to try and sort of get out of, I suppose, as a manager and as a set of players, because fans will become disenchanted and start to sort of get the hump and then start to get on the backs, and then it becomes a bit toxic and da-da-da-da-da. So, yeah, Aldershot aren't in a good place. Dagenham and Redbridge aren't in a good place. You look at Solihull, just further up the table, aren't in a good place. You look at their form, the three teams are absolutely wretched, right at the wrong time of the season.
Yeah, they certainly are. And of course, two of them, it's a realistic possibility that they could both go down in Aldershot and Dagenham as well. I pick up there as well about it's being a results game, and it certainly is. I know we've had Aldershot fans in the past. I think we've had Rob on, and he said, to be honest, I'd rather see entertainment than be in Halifax's position, because I've compared Halifax and Aldershot a lot, because I think if there was one club in this division that I think you can compare Halifax to and Aldershot to, it'd probably be Halifax. They're both quite, I think, ambitious fan bases because of the history that they've got, quite demanding, yet they've got very low budgets in the division, probably two of the worst budgets in the division. Yet Halifax consistently are competing at the right end of the table by playing probably not the prettiest of football, but effective football. Whereas Aldershot, they play entertaining football, yet they're always towards the bottom of the table, if that makes sense. Of course, last season, I think, was a bit of a shock to everyone how well they did, and they certainly overachieved. They had some great individuals and hidden gems in that side, but it's always going to be hard to replace those, particularly when you play this style of football as well. Attacking players are going to be on more show because they're going to be able to show their true ability, and that's what I think Tolage and Stokes did very well last season. But he mentioned to me he'd rather have entertaining football than be in Halifax's position. And there's probably 600 Halifax fans that are actually out there and said, it's when we're watching National League football, I'd rather see entertainment than actual effective football. And I find that baffling. I find any fans to say that quite baffling, to be honest. I think, for me personally, I think I'd much rather have a club that's competing at the right end of the table by playing quite a distinctive and maybe less attractive style and less easy on the eye to watch than, just trying to outscore teams every week and losing 4-3 every week, which is something that Aldershot seem to do quite a lot, to be fair. But no, I think when people made that point, they probably didn't mean relegation. They meant more like a mid-table position. But for me now, I think it's clear Aldershot need to change that style of football because it's not working. And I think if they played a more defensive style and a more conservative style, I think that they are a strong enough defence to actually be able to grind out these results that they need to be able to survive this season. Because I do think if you look at Aldershot's squad across the team, I'm not saying it's an amazing side, but it's a side for me that's capable of surviving this season, for me personally. So we should be getting on to the predictions now. Someone else has said Shots will stay up this season. Yeah, we'll get on to the predictions now. These are the scores on the doors. I'm still in the lead. I need to remove that badge, actually, like the logo of my channel, and get rid of the white background because it's hiding the amount of points that I got. I got 5 points last game week, and Sam actually got 6. It says Paul towards the bottom end of that screen, and it just shouldn't at this point. It should. I should go back to guest. But no, Paul, you're still in the race at the moment.
Just about, Luke. Just about. Let's got lots of games coming up, midweek games as well, that we could probably do predictions on, even if we don't do shows. But yeah, it's I'm glad for Sam and Rob's input. They clearly know better than I do what the National League's going to do on a weekly basis. So here's to hoping that I can just claw ahead, but we'll wait and see.
It only takes one game week at this point, to be honest. One very strong game week. If you've gone for different predictions to me to be able to take the lead. I've said the record is 15 points on this channel, which I think we did. I think it might have been, I'm not blowing my own trumpet, I think it was me when Wrexham were in this division and we got 15 points. I think you actually had a good game week that week as well. Whereas I don't think we've ever got close since then. I think the best one of us has got is probably, I think, 10 points. And I think that was actually you since then. So, yeah, you need a big game week, don't you, Paul?
Massive game week. I feel confident I will do it, Luke, but who knows? There's some really not unusual, but sort of games this week that they really could go either way, looking at form recently and the sort of teams that are beating each other. So, difficult one. Not many outstanding sort of teams that I think will beat someone easily, etc. So we'll see how we get on.
Do you want to give the travel page a plug as well? Of course, you do.
I mean, listen, if there's anyone who wants a holiday, to please give me a call. I can tell you all about Bosnia and Bulgaria that I've been this week. But yeah, give us a shout. Summer holiday periods. It's still wet and cold outside, isn't it? So anyone who's thinking of a summer break, doesn't matter how long, doesn't matter where, who with, we can look at all sorts of different trips for all sorts of different budgets and time frames. But do give me a shout and I'll be happy to help, and just let us know where you're part of the Luke Walsh community, and I'll see what sort of good deal I can do for you.
Brilliant. We'll get on with the predictions now, starting things off with of course Aldershot coming up against Hartlepool. Just speaking about both clubs in general first, we've spoke quite a lot about Aldershot. Hartlepool themselves losing in midweek, the first home defeat since Darryl Sall left the club. actual home defeat was against Rochdale back on the 24th of September. Of course, they did lose at home to an inform Altrincham. Yeah, quite a big game for both clubs. I think if Hartlepool want to get in the playoffs this season, they've got to be going to Aldershot thinking, look, this is a side that's currently in the relegation zone. We've got to win here. But if you're Aldershot, you'd probably say, Hartlepool very inconsistent this season, particularly away from home. This is a game where we need to get 3 points. How do you see it?
Yeah, I genuinely can't see it. I've gone with Aldershot 1, Hartlepool 3. I think Hartlepool for the playoffs is a hard push now. You look at it now, the 33 games. They played the most, I think, out of all the teams in the league. And they are on 44 points. So they're 6, 7, 8 points off of Halifax in 7th. That's a tough ask when you look at the amount of teams above them who've got games in hand. So, Hartlepool can only concentrate on what they can do. They can't worry about anyone else now because of the amount of games they played. So I would suggest that they're going to go to Aldershot and they're going to fancy themselves winning. So I've gone with Aldershot 1, Hartlepool 3.
If you do want to play along, guys, of course, put your comments in the live chat. It's count your own scores as well. 3 points if you get the exact result correct. So, for example, there, Paul's gone for 3-1 to Hartlepool. If it does finish 3-1 to Hartlepool, he gets 3 points. If Hartlepool go on to win 2-0 against Aldershot, he would get 1 point. And, of course, if Aldershot get a draw or a win, he wouldn't get a single point at all. I'm pleased to say I've gone for a different result. I've actually gone for a 1-1 draw. If you look at both sides, they've both got the most amount of draws in the division. Hartlepool have got the most, followed by Aldershot. Aldershot have got 4 games on the bounce at home. Now, they're 4 huge games, and they've got to look at these games and I think look at it from a tactical perspective on which ones are winnable and which ones they can get results out of. Hartlepool have had 1 win in 9 for them. They're not on the best of form. I'm surprised that they haven't slipped further down the table than what they have done. They've remained in that top half at the moment. I think they currently sit 11th. But yeah, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw for this game. If you look at Hartlepool's away form, it's a little disappointing. I think Hartlepool overall for me have disappointed me a little bit this season. So yeah, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw for this one. Moving on to actually one final question on Aldershot. I'm going to ask you, do you think they'll survive this season?
At this stage, no. I don't think they will. It's difficult to see where they might get the points needed from. They're going to need a really good run of games. And I think you're right, Luke. 4 games at home is something you've got to hang your hat on and say, right, this is where we're going to start getting points. But if you start, if you don't pick up points in the first couple, the next 2 become even more important and even more pressures put on them. And I think what also will help with what will affect Aldershot is how the other results go around them. Because being a fan of a team near the bottom, you're constantly looking at how the other teams are doing, as well as your own. You don't worry just about yourself. You worry about. So I can't imagine that the players, managers are any different. They probably look at results at 5 o'clock on a Saturday and think, oh shit, this is where we're at now. Right, we need to do this next time. So yeah, I think they're going to be. I think they're banging trouble. I think they might go down.
In the final 6 games as well, Aldershot have York away and Barnet away. I still think Aldershot will survive. I think overall, when I look at the fixtures, I think they've been they've been a bit unkind to Aldershot in terms of the fixtures. When they've had postponements as well, they've missed out on probably winnable games at home. I don't think this FA Trophy one's actually going to help them because it's something that Aldershot take very seriously. So you've got to focus on getting to Wembley whilst you're trying to survive in the National League. And I think it's getting to a point now for me where Aldershot, where they make a choice. Look, we either take the trophy really seriously and go to Wembley and hope we survive, or we put all our eggs in one basket on surviving this season. I think they've got to prioritise one of those. And I think for me, if I was an Aldershot fan, I know they've not been to Wembley before, but I think it has to be the league. These 4 home games for them are Hartlepool at home, Solihull at home. So you'd like to think those 2 are quite, I think, realistic for them to pick up results. When you look at Solihull's recent form, they're then in the FA Trophy away. They've then got Dagenham at home. Dagenham, another side, they could potentially slip through the net. They're the most out-of-form side in the division at the moment. And then you've got Gateshead at home as well. Of course, that is quite a bit in advance. But then after that, they've got a couple of difficult away games. So these 4 home games are going to be huge for Aldershot. And I know it's a difficult time for the fan base, and I understand there'll be a lot of criticism towards the players and the management team at the moment. But I think they really need to just get behind this squad, because these 4 games are going to be huge, and they need to make the EBB a bit of a fortress to hopefully pick up a good amount of results in these next couple of games. Moving on to the next one then, Altrincham versus Fylde. We've gone from talking about sides that are 2 of the most out of form sides in the division, in Aldershot and Dagenham, to now talking about an Altrincham side that are really, really on form at the moment. They do feel like this team to beat at the moment, alongside Barnet, Altrincham. How do you see this one going?
I think there can only be one winner, can't they? Fylde don't have a manager, can't really seem to get any sort of form together. Whereas we talk about Altrincham in fits and starts, don't we? But they're still there. They're 6th in the table. What they've got, 3 wins and 2 draws in the last 5. That's incredible. I've gone for a 3-0 Altrincham win. They're at home, which is always going to be helpful. We always look at home advantages as being an advantage. And will there be a new manager bounce, even if it's a caretaker manager for Fylde? I'm not convinced. Altrincham are in banging form, and they're going to be looking at trying to get as far up that table to help with their playoff chances as possible. So Altrincham 3, Fylde 0.
I've gone for a similar result. I've gone for Altrincham 4, Fylde 0. Fylde 62 goals against them this season. Fylde have had only 2 wins away from home all season. Of course, one of those did come at the Shea. For me, Altrincham just look like the side that's in the best form at the moment. And if you actually look at them, they're scoring a healthy amount of goals whilst also being really tight defensively as well. Newby and Linney have been on fire. I think they've both really stepped up. There was a lot of questions about Con Clark leaving and being able to produce the same amount of numbers, yet Linney's really proven what he's capable of this season in terms of the amount of goals he's scored. And Newby's fitted that Con Clark role perfectly for him as well. I know he was injured for large parts of last season. And I think, against this Fylde defence, it looks very vulnerable at the moment for me. I think Altrincham should comfortably win this game. So I'm going Altrincham 4, AFC Fylde 0. Moving on to the next one now, I believe it is Boston versus Eastleigh. Quite an interesting one to call this. Eastleigh, if you look at the previous 2 games, they've won both games. As for Boston, a huge win in midweek for them away at AFC Fylde. At the moment, if they continue on the form that they've shown in the past 4 or 5 games, so Boston, they could easily be in with a case of surviving this season. And Eastleigh this season, I think if you look at them overall, they've been very inconsistent. And I do think, with safety being realistic, I think for now for Boston, I do think it's realistic. And I think the mood in the camp will be quite an optimistic mood and positive mood. I think Boston are going to come into this game with the aim to actually win it, and I think they can do, and I think they're going to win 3-1. How do you see it going?
Boston 3-1, Luke. Good.
Yeah.
Bold shot. I've gone with an Eastleigh 2-0 win. If you look at what Eastleigh have done in the last 5 games, they've beaten the 2 teams below them. They've lost the 3 teams that they've played that are above them. So Eastleigh can clearly are where they are, sort of mid-table, just above mid-table, because they can beat those lower teams. Where they're not being able to sort of push on is because they're not beating those teams above them. Obviously, Boston are well below Eastleigh. I think Boston, like we said, they've got to be a bit more consistent. They're making a real fight for it. They are at home. I haven't visited Boston's ground yet. We've got to go at Easter weekend, so I'm looking forward to that. So, you've got to make that ground a little bit of a fortress and difficult to play at. I've gone with the 2-0 Eastleigh win. I think, the fact that they won the last 2 against teams that they should be, I think that will continue this weekend.
Yeah, I look at those wins though, and they're against an Aldershot side that are out of form at the moment, and then against the Dagenham side that are in the worst form in the division. And how much can you read into those 2 games? If you look at the previous couple, losing to Forest Green, losing to Sutton, Altrincham, I think Eastleigh, they're very inconsistent. Whereas you look at Boston at the moment, and they're on very, very strong form. They had 1 defeat in the previous, I think, 4, I believe, in the league. Of course, wins against York, a point against Barnet as well, and then actually winning at midweek against Fylde. For me, I think they'll go into this game quite a positive way, and I think they could actually beat Eastleigh here. So I'm actually going to go for 3-1 Boston. Moving on to the next game, then Dagenham and Redbridge versus Oldham. Oldham themselves, the home form at the moment is not looking good. Since Christmas, actually, quite an interesting stat here if I can actually get it up. If you look at Oldham, they won't. I think they haven't actually. I think they've had 5 defeats at home all season. 3 of them have actually come in the new year compared to before Christmas. And of course, that's since the squad's changed slightly in the likes of Clucas leaving and Stones leaving, which says a lot to me. And I think they are going back to last season's bad habits in a way, where they were quite strong away, but didn't really have a team that was suited to playing at home. However, they're away here at a Dagenham side that are on awful form at the moment. They've got no confidence. They haven't won in 9 games now, Dagenham. I don't even think Oldham have to particularly play well to win this game. And yes, I know Oldham aren't playing well at the moment, but I don't think Dagenham are much of an opposition. I'm actually going to go for a 2-0 Oldham win. How do you see this one going?
I've gone with a 2-1 Oldham win, purely because Dagenham are just in a worse place than Oldham are at this present time. You look at Oldham, you look at some of Oldham. We talked about them last season. We talked about them this season about them getting their act together. And we thought Mickey Mellon had got their act together. And all of a sudden they've hit this patch where you look at only the last 3 games. All of them were at home. Maidenhead, who they played, Maidenhead, Sutton, and Altrincham. And they haven't won 1 game at home in those 3. They've got 2 points out of 9. When they're trying to push on, because Forest Green haven't exactly shown, the sort of form that Barnet have, all of a sudden it becomes very difficult. So I think it's a game that there's not too much involved with Oldham and Dagenham. I'm going with Oldham winning 2-1. Excuse me.
Dog's going mental then with that prediction. But no, for me, honest, I don't even think it's a case of like it being it's a good result for Oldham. I don't mean that. I'm struggling to get my words out. I'm basically saying that I don't think Oldham actually have to play well to win this game. I don't expect them to play well. I don't think Oldham coming away from Dagenham suggests to me that they've improved a lot on recent weeks. I just think Dagenham are that poor of an opposition at the moment. I don't think there's anyone to really stand in Oldham's way of actually winning this game. So, I'm going to go for Oldham to win this game 2-0. Dagenham, now another side, speaking about them sleepwalking into a relegation. I asked Sam this. I said, who's more likely to go down if one of these sides does go down, if it's Aldershot or Dagenham? Interestingly, he actually said that he thought it'd be Dagenham. Do you agree with that, or do you think if you had to pick one, you'd say Aldershot?
God, it's a tough one. I mean, Dagenham are they're in a wretched run of form. Got rid of their captain, the goalie, Justin, last week. There seems to be a real sense of disconnect between the fans and the club at the moment. Suggested maybe a little bit rudderless. I mean, poor old what's his name? The manager, Lewis Young. He's come in and he's having to deal with his first managerial role. A real tough gig. And I don't think it's much of a thought of Ben Strebman's before. I don't think he was given maybe the support he probably was. He certainly wasn't when he first appointed, and there was a lot of change, and that sort of continued beginning of this season from last season. So it's something not quite right at Dagenham at the moment, and they are very much similar to the fact that Aldershot and their form, and if it wasn't for their early form getting some points on the board, they'd be well down there with their recent ways of playing. So I could see them getting dragged in, especially if Wealdstone or Maidenhead or Woking, Braintree starts carry on sort of getting the points they are, then Daggers will naturally drop.
just feel like in the squad as well, there's a bit of a lack of belief and they've given up there, which is really sad to see, particularly at this stage of the season if you actually watch them play. Moving on to the next one, Forest Green Rovers, of course, their form, they've had a bit of a mixed form as of late for a side that is competing at the top, you would say that. As for Woking themselves, still doing very well under Neil Ardley, just a one defeat which came away at York. For me, I look at Forest Green and they've had only 3 wins in 10 games. This is a Woking side that have really improved under Neil Ardley. Defensively, a lot stronger than what they were. I just think they'll be able to pick up a result here. And as for Forest Green, not scoring too many goals at the moment, so I'm going to go for a 0-0 draw. How do you see it going?
I think Woking are very typical of what I said earlier, Luke. Get a manager in with it, what we talk about, Fylde. Get a manager in and just stop them losing. Just stop them losing. And then if we can start winning games, even better. But if you keep clean sheets, you're going to at least have a point on the board. And Woking have kind of shown that mentality, and they changed the squad a little bit, and it's working very well under Ardley. And they're just going to consolidate now. I think they just make sure they got National League status next season, and then can they push on into those playoffs like they had done the previous couple. I have gone with the Forest Green Rovers win purely because at some point they need to pick up something, in terms of what they'd lost. I mean, they drew 0-0 with Ebbsfleet and they lost 2-0 to Braintree, 2 teams that aren't exactly, on fire, are they? Well, Ebbsfleet for definitely. That must be a worrying sting for the Forest Green Rovers fans. The squad isn't very big. They've come down from League Two. We thought they were well equipped to go back up. We thought they might spend some money to go back up, especially the firepower they seem to have on their books. But it just hasn't worked. And I have gone with the Forest Green Rovers win purely because they are at home, but it will be tough for them. I'm not saying that it won't be, but that's why I've gone with a 2-1 win to Forest Green. Tight game.
I think Forest Green as well, Woking, I should say, defensively are really, really a lot tighter than what they were. Of course, a clean sheet against Solihull Moors, they're really hard to break down. And that's something that Neil Ardley's done perfectly there. He's come into the squad, a squad that's really been struggling, looking like a side that could go down themselves this season with bad ownership. And since the new ownership's coming and Neil Ardley's come in, they've become a lot more competitive. And it does feel like they've got a bit of an identity about them now, where they're really hard to beat and they're able to grind out results. Probably not scoring too many, but defensively they're very strong. And I think at Forest Green, that's something that you've got to be. And I think they're well equipped to that. So I think they'll be able to get a result there. As for next game, we've got Maidenhead versus Yeovil. Speaking of sides on decent form at the moment, Maidenhead, they've turned around their defensive concerns for the first half of the season. And now, of course, I think they haven't conceded a goal in the previous 3 games. Probably playing Yeovil at a slightly bad time. Yeovil have finally got a victory. I think prior to that game, they hadn't won in 7 or 8 games. This is another one where I could see another draw here. I'm actually going to go for a 0-0 draw. How do you see it going?
I've gone with a 1-1 draw. Both teams don't score a bundle of goals. I think that's been Yeovil's main problem this season is getting a tune out of their centre forwards. There's a little bit of unrest down there in the West Country. I think more towards Martin Hellier, the chairman, and the manager Mark Cooper. But Mark Cooper isn't void of any sort of what's the word? Not hatred, I suppose. It's a bit too criticism. Criticism. Yeah, it's they lost to Wealdstone at home, didn't they? Last week they got that win against Tamworth after being 1-0 down. So I think they've been a little bit unlucky, Yeovil, in terms of some loan players. Kofi Shaw's gone back to Bristol Rovers, and they lost Plant, James Plant, potentially to a hamstring injury for the rest of the season. So been a little bit unfortunate, I think, with some injuries across the squad, Yeovil. But they've got to be pleased overall. 14th in their first season back after winning National League South last season is not a bad return. As for Maidenhead, I don't think there's much more we can say about Maidenhead. Luke, Alan Devonshire does what Alan Devonshire does and picks out results where you think it's nigh on impossible. And we genuinely thought, again, they were dead and buried. And, Not to say they still could go down, but they've made a real head start in trying to stay up, and I think that will continue on Saturday by getting a draw against Yeovil.
I don't think for either team it'd be a bad point. I think Yeovil now, they don't particularly have too much to play for, probably just securing safety, which they should do. If we just look there at the amount of points that they've currently got, they're currently sat on 42 points. I said a couple of weeks ago, or maybe over a month ago actually now, that I think the points tally will be very low this season. A lot of those sides towards the bottom have really improved recently. Wealdstone have pulled a few good results out of the bag, Maidenhead, even Fylde, of course, I know overall haven't really got any momentum, but a couple of wins for them against Halifax. I think the points at the moment, if you look at what it's projected, I think it's about 45 points where it was 42 earlier. So Yeovil should be fine this season, really. Just probably one or two more wins, and they should be safe for next season now. So I think a point of Maidenhead won't be too disappointing considering the form of them. And as for Maidenhead, I think they just want to keep this unbeaten run going at the moment. And yeah, really strong defensively themselves, which is something that's really good to see, I think, considering how poor they were for that first half of the season or so on the defensive front of things. Moving on to the next game then, of course, we've got high-flying Barnet, who of course have just beaten second place York in midweek, up against a Rochdale side that got a fairly strong point at Halifax. I say a strong point. I look at Rochdale's position at the moment. They've got 4 games in hand on sides around them in the division, including Halifax themselves. I personally think that draws at this stage of the season now, they need to be looking to win games. I think on Tuesday night, for example, at Halifax away, I don't particularly think we played well. I think Rochdale were probably the better side. I think we'll be coming away from that thinking that was a bit of a missed opportunity there. They were there for the taking and we've missed it. And now coming up against the Barnet side that have just beaten York, one of the most informed side in the division at the moment. It's going to be a tough ask for them to win here today. On Saturday, I should say. For me, I don't think it'd be a bad point for Barnet if they went here and got a point. And as for Rochdale, I think they are desperate to win. But, Barnet at home, is that really a bad point for me personally? No. But I do think they're at a stage now where they need to just start winning games. And it doesn't matter who it's against. I'm going to go for another draw. I think it'll be a high-scoring draw, though, a 2-2 draw. How do you see it going?
I've gone with a Barnet 2-1 win. They're on bang on form, aren't they, Luke? And they're going to go to any team, no matter whether it's home and away, and think that we can win this. We can win any game against any team at the moment. And yeah, Rochdale, I think you're right. Got to turn draws into wins. They are sitting 9th, which looks good, but they're actually 7 points off you guys. Halifax in 7th place, and they've only lost 1 in the last 5, but only won 1 in the last 5. 3 draws on the bounce. They've got to turn those draws into wins, especially if some of those draws are going to start coming in those games in hand, because that is the biggest bonus they have at this moment in time. But it could also be their biggest hindrance, because they're going to have to play Saturday, Tuesday for a long period now to get these games in. And that could affect them. I don't know how healthy their squad is. I don't know, what they're like with suspensions, and teams are starting to have players who are coming up to the 5 bookings, the 10 bookings, and missing 1 or 2 games here and there. But yeah, a difficult one for Rochdale, difficult one for Barnet. But I think they're going to go there and beat Rochdale.
Moving on to the next game then now, and of course it is Gateshead versus Solihull Moors, or Solihull Moors versus Gateshead, I should say. Gateshead, been a lot of questions about them in the last couple of podcasts that we've done about them limping over the finish line to finish inside the playoffs this season. Yet they're still picking up results, and I think it shows a lot of character when you're 3-2 down against a Sutton side that overall are quite defensively solid, and that actually managing to go on to win that game, and then going to likes of Wealdstone as well, putting 4 past them. Go up against a Solihull side that are out of form at the moment, yet to win under Matt Taylor. We've both got same opinion, I think, on Matt Taylor as a manager, Paul, and the overall appointment, and it's clearly just not worked. I think Solihull's playoff chances now they were right in the mix of finishing inside the playoffs before he came in. He's now come into the side. They're now 10 points off the playoffs, playing more games than Halifax as well. For me, the playoffs are gone for them now. And they're coming up against a Gateshead side that are just desperate for more victories to be able to secure a playoff spot this season. And I think they'll do that, and I think they'll do it comfortably. I'm going to go for a 3-0 Gateshead win. How do you see it going?
Oh, I've gone for the same, actually. I think you're completely right. Solihull had one shot on target apparently on Saturday against Woking. I don't think they've scored, have they? Or they've probably only scored 1 or 2 under Matt Taylor's reign. Gateshead. Listen, we sound like a broken record when it comes to Gateshead, but in a good way, because I find it incredible that a team like Gateshead in the National League, they haven't got the biggest setup, they haven't got the most money, they haven't got the biggest fan base, they haven't got the best football ground. But what they seem to do is churn out excellent footballers, excellent managers that are highly regarded in the Football League, and they seem to be able to bounce back from the fact that players get sold, players move on, players are recalled from loans because they've done so well for Gateshead. Managers are taken, and they've got that succession planning right. They've got managers who want to come and manage them. They're clearly doing something right off the pitch as well as on it. And like you said, Luke, when we sort of did our mid-season, sort of just after Christmas predictions, we felt they were the team that were going to drop away because of the situation they would find themselves in with players leaving, managers leaving, They're proving again that they're more than capable of staying in those playoffs. And if you look at it, where Southend are 8th on 46 points, Gateshead are 55 points, 9 points difference. I think they were going to be a shoo-in, unless there's a real downturn in form, to be in the playoffs. And they're coming up against a Solihull team that are abject at the moment. And you know what? I'd be very surprised if Matt Taylor lasts the season at Solihull.
I think, considering, of course, Andy Wing left to go into the Football League, but what interested me, and they've kind of got a bit of egg on the face now, Solihull Moors, is this was a point when they was actually sat in 8th position, I think, when he left the club. They made a point in the statement that they're disappointed that Andy Wing's left the club, but they wish him all the best. But we can now be sure looking out for a new coach who can actually do better than what he did. That's basically what they said, not in so many words, because they believe that they basically said, we understand that we haven't performed as well as what fans would expect, considering the squad we've had. They said that when they were 8th in the league. Since Matt Taylor's come in, they've actually haven't won in 7 games. They've had 6 defeats in 7 as well. For me personally, they've got a lot of egg on their face now. I know at this point in the season it's hard to find an appointment, but I look now and I think Solihull rushed into that appointment. I think they really did. They wanted to get an appointment done quickly after Andy Wing had left, and I think they didn't need to. I think you look now, Mike Williamson would probably have been available if they'd have left it another week. He'd have been a perfect opportunity. Matt Saunders as well. He's another manager now. Well, another assistant manager that's looking to get a permanent role, and I think Solihull have been perfect for him geographically as well. Whereas now they're stuck with probably Matt Taylor until the end of the season because they're going to have to pay off his contract. And for me personally, it just wasn't the right option. And I think a lot of people, including Solihull fans, looked at that appointment and thought it was quite a strange one, considering what he'd done for Wealdstone in the first half of the season, because he hadn't particularly done well there. I think he was probably just about accepted within the Wealdstone fan base, as in I think he just about did okay there, you might say, in that first half of the season. I think they were just outside of the relegation zone, 5 wins. Yeah, would you say what he'd done? I know now we've both got quite strong opinions about him, but do you think he did okay for that first half of the season at Wealdstone now?
He had one, I think he had 1 month where results were okay, Matt, Luke.
Do you think in terms of the table, he was out? He had them outside of the drop zone. I know you said to me that all that matters is Wealdstone survived. Do you think did enough? Or?
Yeah, he left us in the bottom 4. David Noble was appointed last year on the back of Stuart Maynard leaving. He wasn't a success. He seemed a little bit out of his depth. Not even he left us in the bottom 4. Matt Taylor came into that job. I'm going to be quite vocal here. He came into that job. He didn't know the league. He didn't know the players. He admitted that in his Solihull interview when he got the Solihull job. He said, I know the league better than I did then. His recruitment was dreadful. He took him 15 games to decide what his best formation was for the Wealdstone. He didn't know where to play. He signed a young lad called Callum Cisse, who he knew from the Tottenham Academy. He put that lad in 3 or 4 different positions until he decided where his favourite. As an example, yes, we had problems with the goalkeeping position, but that wasn't the main issue as to why we were losing games. We had a weak mentality. We were not managing games very well. And this is coming from a man who played in the top level of the English football leagues. He played in the Premier League on a regular basis. He knows about mentality. He knows about game management. And he couldn't translate that to the players that he had recruited or retained from last season. Okay, he left us in the bottom 4. If Matt Taylor was a football team, he would be in 23rd place in the National League right now. He's got 4 or 5 wins out of the 31 games that he's managed at this level this season. Okay, he done us a massive favour by jumping ship and going work for his mates at Solihull. And Solihull must be ruining the fact that they jumped in to take him, Matt Taylor, because he doesn't know what he's doing at National League level. Okay, might be a very nice man, but as a football manager, he has proven that he's not cut out for it. Okay, and Solihull have gone from playoff contenders to mid-table cannon fodder.
Yeah.
All right, mid-table. I wouldn't be surprised, and I might be a bold prediction here, Wealdstone could even end up being ahead of Solihull by the end of the season, looking at the form that the 2 teams are in, right? So I feel for Solihull fans because they've got a manager there that clearly looks like he doesn't know what he's doing, okay? Talks a good game, but doesn't translate it to that on the pitch. And we can say that about a lot of managers, but he's been really obvious this season with Matt Taylor, how it is, okay? So, yeah, I feel for Solihull fans. I think they'll get drubbed on Saturday by Gateshead, and I will be very surprised if he stays till the end of the season. Because if you look at Solihull's Twitter feed after their performance on Saturday at Woking, there was clown pictures, there was get out of my club, all sorts from Solihull fans. They've not warmed to him. He didn't warm to any of the Wealdstone fans. It was almost like he was there. He's come from a professional outfit. I understand that. He played Premier League football, EFL football. So it's a different thing compared to some of the National League teams and the way that they're set up and their cultures. But he doesn't warm himself to fans as it is. By the way, he's very media savvy. He'll say the right things, but he doesn't back it up with any substance on the football pitch. And it's happening again at Solihull. So I think Gateshead will beat him 3-0. I don't think he'll last the season. Potentially someone like Wilson could end up above Solihull, and I wouldn't be surprised on their form. And, I think Gateshead will take advantage of that, and they will consolidate being in that top 5 come Saturday.
That is a bold prediction. But to be fair, we'll miss out the next 2 fixtures and come on to them. But of course, as we're on the topic of Wealdstone and Matt Taylor, we'll come on to Wealdstone then. Of course, they've got back-to-back wins under Neil Gibson. It does feel like now he's really hit off there. Of course, quite a favourable game on paper, you'd say, for Wealdstone to be able to get that 3rd win on the bounce. I think it's nothing but that. I think what I should say is I think it is a must-win for Wealdstone against Ebbsfleet, considering Ebbsfleet's current position. Of course, they've been a bit more competitive in recent weeks. Ebbsfleet, of course, getting a point against Forest Green and Rochdale, but I still would like to think Wealdstone can get all 3 points here, and I'm actually going to go for a Wealdstone 2-0 win. But no Neil Gibson coming. Had a bit of a shaky start there, but he's got back-to-back wins now, and I think his interviews, he's a lot more honest. He's a lot more honest and seems to be a little bit more down to earth with the fans based on the feeling I get about him.
Yeah, without a shadow of doubt. And he comes from the Welsh League, not known. A lot of positive noises made about him from fans that have watched the teams that he's managed and said that he's a good guy and he'll manage, we'll get the best out of him at Wealdstone, etc. He's shown more in the first month of being in charge at Wealdstone about what the club means to the fans than Matt Taylor ever did. Okay, and I think that's been responded to off the pitch and on the pitch. Listen, to get an away win at Yeovil and an away win at Braintree this week, was possibly unexpected, but very well received. That really helps us going into Ebbsfleet at home, Boston at home before we have a break because of the FA Trophy. So if we can get 4 to 6 points out of Ebbsfleet and Boston, we're going to be in a much healthier position off the back of those 2 away wins against Yeovil and Braintree. And, that gives a good month and a half with not many losses. Some players will come back from injury. It's looking a lot healthier than it was maybe even 2 weeks ago, Luke. And this is how the National League can change on such a quick thing, So we've got to take advantage of Ebbsfleet only winning 1 game all season. Yes, they are improving. Josh Wright has got them sort of competing, which is great to see because you want to see teams compete in this league, whether they're going to go down or not. But I do think I'm similar to you. I think Stones will win 2-0. We don't score bundles of goals. We also don't score bundles of goals. I think they win 2-0, and that will help us go into that Boston game on Tuesday.
Yeah, I've actually gone for a 2-1 win now. Of course, Wealdstone's previous 2 games have been 2-1 wins for them. If you actually look at Ebbsfleet as well, when they're losing games, they're not losing by many either. Of course, losing to York 2-0, Halifax 2-0, and then, of course, draws against Rochdale and Forest Green Rovers. But the issue for Ebbsfleet is that they're not actually scoring many goals, yet defensively they're a lot stronger. If you actually look, they've only conceded 5 goals in the previous 5, which is a major improvement if you actually consider how they were doing in the previous 5 to that. And as the season as a whole, they're not getting battered anymore. And I think for Wealdstone coming to this game, it don't really matter how you win. We've just got to find a way to win. And I do expect Wealdstone to be able to do this. But yeah, I'll tell you what I find interesting about Wealdstone, and I'm going to give them credit here, is the fact that they can be out of form. A lot of the time they look doomed, but they always seem to pull it out of the bag this season. Early on in the season, they had a difficult start. Then Alex Reid came, and I think they won 3 games on the bounce. The form was excellent. They were grinding out results. And then after that, of course, recently, Matt Taylor's left the club. They've gone on a bit of a bad run of form. Once again, everyone's kind of had the impression that they're going to go down and kind of join and create a gap between them and the other sides above them. Yet once again, they managed to pull it out of the bag of Wealdstone and get back-to-back wins. And you look at this Ebbsfleet game now, and it's quite a favourable fixture for them. And I think look at until the end of the season now, there are a lot of favourable fixtures there. Boston as well after Ebbsfleet at home, another favourable fixture when you look at their position, and then Tamworth away as well. So for me at the moment, Wealdstone, they're certainly in their hands. It feels now to be able to survive this season. Moving on to the next game now, Sutton versus Braintree. Sutton, of course, will be looking to bounce back after Tuesday's defeat. They haven't won in 3 games. As for Braintree, were on decent form. Of course, I think lost in midweek, didn't they, Braintree against Wealdstone. I am going to back Sutton to win this game 2-0. How do you see it going?
I've gone Sutton 3, Braintree 1. They're going to be a little bit wounded from the loss that they had against Wealdstone the other night. First half they probably dominated a little bit and were, the better team. They got sucker punched. The goalkeeper made a horrific mistake. He sort of caught the ball and fell straight back into his own goal, which didn't help. And from that point on, Wealdstone then got the second very quickly. So I think, off the back of some decent results, to lose at home to a relegation rival or, that bottom half rival is not going to be hugely helpful going into this game. Sutton, a bit like Yeovil, they're not likely to go up. They're not going to go down. I think they've made a couple of signings in terms of contract extensions, etc. So they're clearly building for next year as well. Again, very young side, aren't they, Sutton? So having a year in the National League will do them the world of good for next season. I think they will win being at home again at Green Lane, and they will beat Braintree 3-1.
Tamworth versus Southend. Tamworth driving towards safety now. As for Southend, looking to hunt down a playoff spot. Just feel like it's become very realistic in recent weeks. They're just 6 points behind Halifax now, who currently sit in 7th place. I think this will be a really scrappy game, I have to admit. Both sides defensively very strong, but both sides, I should say, don't concede. Don't score many, I should say. And I do think Southend will come out winners in this game. I'm going to go for a 1-0 Southend win. How do you see it going?
I've gone for exactly the same as you, Luke, for exactly the same reasons. Tamworth are very industrial, very workmanlike play. Probably the team that I've seen most this season play to their strengths, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they haven't got a squad full of names. I commentated on the Wealdstone Tamworth game recently, and I looked at it and thought, there's not really a name I know. They've all come from the National League North. They're very, very adaptable to this level, but they do what they do best. And I think you're right. It will be an attritional football match. And for that reason, I've gone for exactly the same score. Southend are a good run of form. I think you're right. They're going to hunt Halifax, altering them down. Bit of a gap there, but they're on a decent enough run of form, and they're going to fancy it going into the back end of this season. And I think they'll win on Saturday 1-0.
Yeah, I think it's the type of game for me where I could have gone for either side to win, but I am going to back Southend to win. They're on slightly better form at the moment, aren't they? So, yeah, I think Southend will come out winners in this game 1-0. Moving on to the final game now, and it's the one I've been waiting for, I have to admit. It's the Yorkshire Derby. I think it is game of the game week. I think everyone can agree with that, and it's my side, FC Halifax Town, coming up against York City. York fans... I can just tell as soon as if they end up winning this game, over Twitter, I'll be getting a lot of stick. But if Halifax win, that would be huge. Not just for the 3 points, not just for our playoff chances, but just for my own ego, I suppose. If we win this game, it will be huge. I have to admit. Paul, looking at this one, York defeat on Tuesday night against Barnet. For me, I don't actually think that's a good thing for Halifax because I think they'll be desperate to get back to winning ways. And usually when York have a defeat, they seem to bounce back.
Really tough one because York don't want that 7 points to go to 9-10 points, so they're gonna want to bounce back. They're gonna look at Barnet's fixture at Rochdale and go, that's quite a tough one. Will Barnet drop points? I've gone with a 2-2 draw. I know Halifax, you sort of mentioned, didn't you, in some of your social media earlier this week or today, Luke, around having to try and find someone to sort of replace Olawabari, who's gone down to Exeter. Are Halifax capable of scoring 2 goals against York? I think they probably are. It definitely is game of the week. York are going to want to win. It's got the hallmarks of a really good National League game on it. Big crowd. I've gone with a 2-2 draw. Neither team will want to lose that for more than one reason, and I think it'll be a high-scoring 2-2 draw.
Yeah, for me, I look at this one, and I think it's the type of game where I think I could see us actually going there and actually going on and just winning like 1-0 or something. We've got the second best away form in the division overall. But that defeat on Tuesday, I don't think for us has done us any favours because I just feel York are going to be so eager and desperate to get back to winning ways. They're going to really pull out all the stops for this game. The quality in depth as well. I've actually gone for a 2-0 York win. I think York will come out winners. I can't see them absolutely battering us in terms of scoring a lot, but I think it'll be a really difficult game for us. I think it'll be a totally different type of game to the game that was at the Shea. I think we'll have very few chances, I should say, and we've got to take the 1 or 2 chances that I think we're going to get in this game. Unlike what we did at the Shea, where we probably had about 15 or 16 attempts on goal, if not more, and only managed to score once. And I think that was a downfall overall. But yeah, York will be looking to get back to winning ways. I think it'll be a really tight game in terms of neither side will want to give much away. I think we'll try and be really tight defensively and catch them on the break. I mentioned Olawabari leaving, and there were a lot of fans who didn't see that as a major loss because he's very inconsistent. And I think in certain games, I look at Halifax and I think, yeah, we probably don't miss him particularly. But then other games, when it's a game where we have to be defensively strong and we get very few chances, I think he's the type of player that can drive us up the field and create chances for us. And this is the type of game for this. I think it'll be very in quite one-way traffic, I feel. I think York will dominate the football and we'll be trying to catch them on the break. And I don't particularly think we've got too much pace to be able to counter them on the break. And that's something that Oluwabori offered. He was the type of player that could get the ball from his own half and carry the ball all the way up the field. I think one thing I will say is Luca Thomas, of course, ex-York player, he has to start on Saturday because he's a player for me that when I look at him, he offers something a little bit different, a bit of flair as well, which is something I feel we lack at the moment. And he's a player that can certainly put the ball in the back of the net. So I think it's crucial that he starts on Saturday. But no, this is going to be a huge game for me personally. I'm surprised DAZN haven't televised it. I'm actually going to go for a York 2-0 win. But yeah, I am surprised they hadn't televised it, DAZN.
Yeah, that would have been a good one. Who is on the telly? I don't even know who's on the telly, actually, to be fair.
No one's on the telly this week. They weren't last week either, which were a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, no, that would have been a good game for the National League. Good advert, I think, for National League. Listen, it could go either way. I think you're justified in saying why York could win. And it's very brave of you, Luke, being a Halifax fan and the Yorkshire Derby to sort of say that your team are going to lose. So, and that's fair enough. So, yeah, they're going to want to win York because Barnet will slip up somewhere along the way because that's naturally what teams do. It's just how much, and York have got to keep the pressure on. So, a big game. Are you going down there to watch the Shaman?
Yeah. What I was hoping to do, I was hoping to get a lot of my mates to go and just have a full-on day out in York, maybe even stay over or something. Anyway, a few of my mates who don't support Huddersfield are off over in France enjoying themselves, and then the rest of them are all watching blooming dog botherers play against Peterborough on Saturday. So yeah, I'll be going with my dad and my uncle to this one. But now I'm looking forward to it. I think there'll be a big crowd. I think we're less than 100 away. I think we were 98 tickets away before this podcast when I checked from actually selling out that away end of 850. I'd like to think we should for this type of game, the way we're playing at the moment. But no, I am really looking forward to this game. I've said 2-0 to kind of cover myself. I do think York will win 2-0, but slightly to cover myself. But I have got a sneaky feeling. I think it's a case of going with your head rather than your heart. My heart kind of does say for a 1-0 Halifax win, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see. It certainly should be a cracker, and for whoever does come on top of this game, if there is a winner in this one, it certainly will be a huge win for either team. But no, Paulie, are you heading on Saturday to Wealdstone, of course, at home to Ebbsfleet?
Yeah, I can. There's a run of games I can go to now. I'm in the country for a few weeks, so I'll be going to the Wealdstone games as and when I can. We haven't got a game on the trophy weekend, so that will give us a good break. But I'll be there Saturday, Tuesday, and then the following Tuesday, Tamworth away. So hopefully we'll could get 9 points out of that next 3 games. Fingers crossed, and we'll see how we go.
Of course, the Predictions League is sponsored by PTS Travel, I think it is.
PTS Travel, yeah.
Yeah, PTS Travel is sponsored by these. These are the scores on the doors at the moment. I am still leading the way. Please remember to like and subscribe as well. It does mean a lot if you can do that. And I should say as well, if you want to become a channel member, it is just £2.99 a month, even if it's just to support the channel further. There are perks to that. You get to use custom emojis if you're into that in the live chat about your own club. And then also what you can do is you will get early access to interviews. If any of the channel members have any other ideas as well that they'd like me to implement exclusively to members without taking anything away from the normal viewer, then please let me know, and I will try and add that if it is something that I'm able to do. Check out our sponsors cards, except there'll be a link in the description to do that. Thank you to everyone that's tuned in tonight. Once again, Paul, it's good to have you back, and thanks for joining me tonight.
No problem. No, it's been good to be back, and back looking at the National League, being in the country, and seeing how we get on the next few weeks.
Brilliant. All right, then. Cheers, everyone. We will see you next week. Bye for now.